And this is going to be pretty basic. We're not going to try to do anything too fancy. You see, we're only using um, mainly black. Just different levels of black. Or you could call it gray. Um, First thing we want to do is start a new file. We're going to call it bthings tutorial. And there are plenty of presets that Adobe is nice enough to give us. Default Photoshop size, 7x5. It always defaults to RGB color with 8-bit. And you can go up US paper, 8.5x11. The important part for us is film and video. We are video people. And we're going to use HD 720p, 29.97 frame rate. And there are plenty of options here, NTSC and your PAL. And look at that 4K film. So that's just an example of Adobe Creative Cloud staying up with the times here. If you have one of those cool 4K capable cameras, we're going to stick with our 720p, 1280 720, resolution 72, and it does default to 8-bit. If you have one of those cool cameras, you can utilize the higher bit rates for color. We're going to stick with our 8. Not doing anything fancy here. And we're going to stick with a white background. Could go transparent or other. We're going to stick with white. And you can always edit your background later, of course, or add a new one. Now, let's talk a little bit about the project. Here's what I was asked to kind of reproduce. Looks like this. This is what the client handed me. This is what they wanted reproduced with just some simple animation. Something they could slap on a website really quick and put in their promotional video. She really likes this. Her clients are comfortable with it. They're used to seeing it. Business has been around for a couple years. So the important part is the font. Definitely have to match that because I did have to reproduce this whole thing. I didn't like the quality that she had given me. I can't just use this old JPEG that she used. She didn't get it off of Photoshop, or she didn't create it with Photoshop. It was probably created in Paint or Word or some type of easy program. I was able to find the B separately. And that's the first thing we're going to use. We're going to import that, or I should say place. File. We're going to use place embedded, place linked is for maybe pulling off of a different Photoshop file or pulling out of, say, Adobe Premiere file or After Effects file. Import is something completely different in Photoshop. Video frames to layers, that's a cool little thing you can do there. Go to place embedded, our B logo. You have the nice rulers here, which is cool. I believe you can go up to view, rulers. There's your rulers up there. No extras. You can take your grid lines out. We're going to keep those on. I don't really want any rulers, but you can see how easy it is to keep it very relative to where you need it. I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. Now my edited is probably going to look a little bit different. First thing we're going to do is place it by double clicking. And now that it's placed, you really can't fully edit it because it's now called a smart layer. We don't really need to get into why that's called a smart layer, but say we wanted to take, because right now if we delete this background, you see that it's still a block shape, and that's going to be really hard to do. See this block, if you had text with the block, really quick, let's go to text tool. This is very easy to use. Just like your Paint or your Microsoft Word. It's text. Now you see that our big white block is in the way of our B things. If we step backwards, now I have just our block. Say we wanted to get rid of this block. We would use so we just used our text tool. This is our pointer tool or our mover tool, kind of our selector tool here. And we talked about grid lines. See how it shows you exactly how far you are. 0, 0, 2.458. We're going to go somewhere in the middle. You can easily do the math and figure out exactly what that is. But we're going to go to our quick selection tool over here. This will help us get rid of this block. And up here is the size. So you're working on something really big, or you want to save time. To 96. Let's go back to, I think 13 is a pretty nice size. Come up here. Quick select whenever we want, since we have that big, pretty easy size to work with. Oh, I'm sorry. First we need to right click and we need to rasterize our smart object, which is what I was starting to talk about earlier. And the reason it needs to be rasterized is because it is not fully editable yet. Once we rasterize this layer, then it's there for good. It can still be moved, but there's a lot of things that you can't do with it anymore. But we're not going to get into that in this tutorial. We're just going to quick select our white, press delete. That gets rid of that. Ooh, that was a good selector. Save us time. See how the quick selection tool saves us a ton of time from going in here and having to delete all that. So it moves pretty quick. And eventually see, you just simply click in the middle here, click in the white spaces. I'm just left clicking, deleting. And say I went too far, I'll show you that in a moment. Say I went too far or it selected too much. Say I didn't want it to select that, I just wanted to select the area above it. You press Alt and you see how in the middle of our selector is a plus sign. If you hold down Alt, that'll give you the minus sign, and then you hold down your left click and you can take out some of that selection, and that's a big help. We got it. We got a really easy selector. So now, when you're using, when you're adding that text, you don't have to deal with that big block. That's pretty cool. So that's one thing you can do to help yourself move objects a little bit easier in Photoshop. Let's look at this B. He's not looking defined enough for us. So we're gonna go, here's our layer panel. We have a text layer that we just made. Obviously there's that T in there. There's quite a few things you can do with text. If you double click, it will give you plenty of options. Bevel and emboss, color, or contour, texture, stroke, inner shadow, inner glow. All of this stuff is very fun to fool around with. Opacity, fill opacity. Very quick selections and cool selections. I'm going to go back to our B logo, see how I just used my little pointer here to select the B logo, which can still be moved around. We're going to our adjustment layers, and you can go up here and also do the same thing. There are plenty of options. Background from layer, new layer completely. New adjustment layer, you see brightness, contrast, levels, curve, exposure. That's all the same stuff that's over here. So we are going to unclick that. And let's add a brightness contrast layer from here. And you see right away after I click that, your new adjustment layer popped up under your text layer. And I took the brightness down so I can have my B stand out a little more, and I can pull my contrast up. Now my B is looking pretty bossy B. And what do we do with our text? Well, we create plenty more layers of the same thing. And the reason why I'm creating separate layers is because they're all going to be different sizes. You see, here is my Edwardian script that I got lucky. It exactly matched the file that my template file. I got really lucky. I was excited when I found the exact match for that that logo. The exact same font. And now we're going to create, I'd say, I don't know, maybe 11 to 14 layers of the same thing, Bethink Studio. And what we want to do with this text, we can go ahead and, we don't need it all selected anymore. We already changed the font size. What we do want to do, I'm going to switch back to my pointer. What we do want to do, we're going to double click this text, and let's name it, let's give it a new name just by double clicking right on the name, and we're going to call it Bethink Studio 1. I'm sorry, Bethink Studio 2. We'll call this one Bethink Studio 1 just to keep things organized. Bethink Studio 1 is the nice big one. We can go from there. Now we're going to double click not right on the name, So we can pull up our layer style again. Layer style selection box. We're going to change our opacity from 100 to, let's go 66. And there's plenty of other things you can do. I'm going to say OK to that. Bring it down here. Now we have a cool effect going. Let's go back to our Bethink Studio 1. I don't like how the bee isn't really standing out enough. It's kind of getting lost in the actual bee's little wing there. Let's double click on that. Let's use outer glow. So now we have a nice glow, and it really wouldn't be yellow if we had a white background. Just kind of giving it that effect. Plenty of other options. Okay. Now we're going to go back over. Now we made the basic shape. Now what I would keep doing is I would make another text layer and another text layer, and we would keep doing the same thing. We would get to the. We'd keep using the same script. We would change the font size, and we would also change the opacity by once again pulling up the blending options. We're going to go back over here to one that I have finished. And you see here are all my layers. I numbered them all 1 through 9, and then there was a Bethany down here. That's the first name of the person who owns the business. And so it's pretty simple. Not too bad. And we have a file that is ready to be animated onto After Effects.